In 1959, 9 experienced hikers went into the Russian mountains. They never came back. When rescuers found their bodies weeks later, some had their skulls crushed with force that shouldn't be humanly possible. No weapons, no tracks, just mangled bodies scattered in the snow. The Soviet government sealed the files for 40 years. Local tribes had one explanation: the creature from the ice. They said it was the Yeti. And here's the thing: they might not be wrong. The Yeti isn't just some bedtime story parents tell their kids in Nepal. For centuries, Sherpa communities in the Himalayas have spoken about something living up there in the frozen peaks. They call it different names: Meto Kangmi, the glacier demon, the abominable snowman. But they all describe the same thing: a massive, hair-covered creature that walks on 2 legs like a human but towers over any man. It leaves footprints twice the size of ours. It moves through blizzards that would kill us in minutes. Western explorers laughed at these stories for years, called it superstition, mountain madness. But then something changed. Evidence started showing up. Real evidence. And suddenly, nobody was laughing anymore. 1951, Mount Everest. Sir Edmund Hillary and his expedition team spot something in the snow ahead. Massive footprints. Fresh ones. They're clearly bipedal, meaning whatever made them walks on 2 legs. But they're enormous, way too big to be human. Hillary takes photographs, documents everything. The prints are over 13 inches long. The stride length suggests something much taller than any person. Hillary was a serious mountaineer, not some tourist looking for attention, and he couldn't explain what he saw. The Sherpas weren't surprised at all. They just nodded and said, "That's the Yeti. That's what lives up there." But Hillary wasn't the first. British explorers had been reporting strange footprints in the Himalayas since the 1920s. Multiple expeditions, multiple witnesses, multiple photographs. All showing the same thing: something massive and bipedal living where nothing that size should be able to survive. Here's where it gets really interesting. Most people don't know this, but the Soviet Union spent millions of rubles researching the Yeti during the Cold War. Not as a joke. This was official government policy. They sent actual scientific expeditions into the mountains, built research stations, collected evidence. Why would a superpower dedicate that kind of money to chasing a myth? In the 1950s and 60s, Soviet scientists conducted systematic searches across the Caucasus Mountains and the Pamirs. They found hair samples that didn't match any known species. They documented dozens of sightings from military personnel, pilots, border guards, people who would face serious consequences for filing false reports. Declassified documents from the Soviet Academy of Sciences mention unidentified bipedal humanoids in multiple regions. One researcher, Boris Porshnev, spent years compiling eyewitness accounts. He gathered over 3,000 reported sightings. And here's the question nobody seems to ask: if this was all nonsense, why didn't the Soviets just say so? But with the Yeti, they kept searching. They kept the files classified for decades. Now back to February 1959. The Ural Mountains. Those 9 hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, set up camp on the slopes of Kolatsiakol. The name translates to Dead Mountain. The indigenous Mansi people avoided the area, said it was cursed. On the night of February 2nd, something happened at that camp. Something so terrifying that these experienced mountaineers cut their way out of their own tent from the inside and ran barefoot into the freezing darkness. When rescue teams found them weeks later, the scene was horrifying. Some bodies were frozen to death, barely clothed, but others had injuries that didn't make sense. Massive chest trauma, ribs fractured. The medical examiners said the force required was equivalent to a car crash. These weren't stab wounds. This was blunt force trauma from something incredibly strong. Here's what made it stranger. There were no signs of a struggle. No defensive wounds. No tracks from any attackers, just the footprints of the hikers themselves, running in panic through the snow. The Soviet government investigated for months. Their conclusion: a compelling natural force killed them. That's it. The files were immediately classified. When the documents finally came out in the 1990s, they raised more questions than answers. Investigators had noted strange orange lights in the sky that night. Some bodies had traces of radiation on their clothes. And perhaps most disturbing, one investigator's notes mentioned that the injuries were consistent with an attack by an unknown creature of extreme strength. That line was crossed out in the official report, but it's there in the original notes. Scientists will tell you the Yeti doesn't exist. They'll point to DNA studies. They'll say the footprints are from bears. In 2017, researchers analyzed supposed Yeti samples from museums. The DNA came back as various species of bear. Case closed, right? Except that study only tested samples that had been sitting in museums for decades. It didn't explain the sightings that continue to happen. And it definitely did not explain why bears would leave perfectly bipedal footprints in a straight line with a stride length of over 4 feet. Bears don't walk like that. Their anatomy doesn't allow it. In 2016, hikers in the Himalayas filmed something moving across a distant ridge. Large, dark, walking upright. The footage shows it clearly walking on 2 legs, not lumbering like a bear. Walking with purposeful movement. Here's what really makes you think. Governments have taken this seriously. In 1959, the Indian government granted an expedition permission to search for the Yeti. But the permission came with rules. Official rules. The expedition was not allowed to kill a Yeti. They could only photograph it. If they captured one, it became property of the Indian state. Why would you create regulations for capturing something that doesn't exist? The U.S. State Department got involved, too. In 1959, the American Embassy in Nepal sent an official memo to Washington about Yeti expeditions. These are official government documents, stamped, filed, preserved in archives. The Indian Army has reported Yeti sightings multiple times. In 2019, they posted photographs on Twitter of large footprints found near a mountaineering base camp, footprints measuring 32 by 15 inches. The Indian Army, not some random hiker. An official military force that thought this was important enough to share publicly. They faced mockery, but didn't take the posts down. Let's talk about what the Yeti could actually be if it exists. Because it's not impossible. Just unlikely. We've discovered new large mammals in the last century. The mountain gorilla wasn't scientifically documented until 1902. We found a new species of great ape in 2003. These are massive animals living in remote areas. The Himalayas are one of the most remote, harsh, unexplored regions on Earth. Thousands of square miles of frozen mountains where humans rarely go. If something wanted to hide there, it could. Some researchers think the Yeti could be a surviving population of Gigantopithecus. That's a real species of giant ape that lived in Asia until about 100,000 years ago. Maybe some survived, adapted to the cold. It's not crazy. The coelacanth fish was thought to be extinct for 65 million years. Then we found living ones in 1938. Species we thought were gone, sometimes aren't. So here's where we are. We have centuries of consistent reports from indigenous peoples. We have photographs from respected explorers. We have government documents treating this as a real phenomenon. We have military sightings. We have the Dyatlov Pass incident with its unexplained injuries. And on the other side, we have DNA tests of old museum samples. We have scientists saying it must be bears. Both sides have points, but if this is all just bears and misidentification, why do the sightings continue? Why do experienced mountaineers keep reporting something different? Why do governments keep filing reports? Why did the Soviet Union spend millions investigating? You'd think, after decades of looking, people would give up. Instead, we keep finding just enough to keep the question alive. A footprint here, a sighting there. Blurry footage that shows something but not quite enough. In 2019, the Indian Army posted those footprint photos. Scientists demanded they take them down. The Indian Army responded by asking, if science is so certain these creatures don't exist, why not send a team to investigate? Why not prove once and for all that it's nothing? Nobody took them up on it. Which makes you wonder, if you're absolutely certain something doesn't exist, wouldn't you want to prove it? Unless maybe some people suspect they might find something they can't explain. The Himalayas are still there, still remote, still largely unexplored, and whatever is leaving those footprints, it's still out there too. Subscribe if you want more stories like this.